Hello, everyone. You can consider this kind of a companion piece to the video I just released, the Debt Offensive Part 2. But you might also see it as a general commentary, a sort of cumulative narration of my thoughts regarding diversity hiring and the general, process thereof. If you listen to any one of my many videos on corporate diversity or workplace diversity, you'll invariably hear a couple of things, or at least a general pattern of explanation from corporate diversity officers or those who advocate for such things. They'll start off saying that diversity is good on a business sense, on the one hand. They'll also say because it's the right thing to do. And when it comes to actually describing what they mean by diversity, generally speaking, it'll go into about 2 or 3 phases of description. First off, the language, and again, I'm talking in general terms, and if you've watched these other videos I've done, you've probably seen this pattern. In general terms, they will start out with very couched language, saying things like a company or a work group or whatever can benefit greatly from a diverse range of perspectives and experiences and backgrounds. Very sort of ambiguous language. Then if they have to drill down further, then maybe they'll concede things like, more women or diverse races or orientations and so on. They'll get more specific about what they mean when they're talking about diversity. And generally speaking, I know I'm saying that a lot, but I just want to make sure nobody thinks I'm talking in absolutes, because it does vary from person to person and company to company. Some handle these things differently than others, but this is sort of the pattern I've seen. They'll move further and further away from aspects of personal merit or individual ability and gravitate towards demographics and optics when it comes down to what they mean by diversity. And yet, as you'll also see, they will mention somewhere, oftentimes, the idea of diversity of thought. Sometimes they get that specific, or again, they talk about in the ambiguities of perspective and experience. And I'd like to believe they actually mean that. But for the life of me, in every single panel discussion I have watched, in every single piece from a company describing their diversity and inclusion initiatives, not once have I ever heard any of these professionals or any of these advocates give any guidance on how to interview someone for their perspective. I mean, I know I shouldn't be shocked, and I'm not meaning to sound shocked, that there is a certain amount of hypocrisy being put out there when it comes to saying they want a diversity of perspectives and what they are actually meaning to imply and or what they actually do. But you would think, and again, maybe my standards are just too high or something, you would think that somewhere in there, if for no other reason than to cover their tracks, they would actually talk about, well, how do you hire for a diverse perspective? So just because it's on my mind after doing that recent video and so many others prior, I would just like to brainstorm for a second and suggest to you, dear audience, if I were put in charge of a diversity and inclusion initiative at a company, how would I handle it? Because it's one thing to constantly and consistently pick apart and complain and make fun of what I see when it comes to these things. But, it's another thing to actually say, all right, smartass, what would you do if you were put in that position? How would you hire for diversity? Okay, well, I will tell you, since I've initiated this of my own accord. And hello to those of you that have joined me on this brief and spontaneous little live stream. Gayest person on YouTube, hello. Pinkalo, hello. Duck Dog, hello. Mike Downey, hello. Renovatio, hello. Cal Ken L, hello. And Keeverdam, hello. Okay, so tell me, Scribe, how do you define diversity? Well, I'll tell you, Scribe. When it comes to hiring for diverse employees, I would look for people who, let's say I'm having to hire for a specific team that does a specific thing in the company. All right. So what is the bedrock of this team? Well, first and foremost, does someone have the requisite skills? I mean, do they actually have the talents and abilities necessary to perform the job? I know, sounds fairly boilerplate, sounds fairly boring, but it's just one of those things you kind of have to check on. All right, so someone gives you their resume, right? Now, a resume is, for the most part, something that is on the honor system, unless or until you have to test somebody for specific things that they've said that they can do. Like if they say they can use Excel, well, put them in front of Excel and tell them to create a spreadsheet of some kind. Or if they can type at 300 words a minute or something, well, test that kind of deal. Okay. Next thing, what about their personality? What do they seem like someone, if this is a group that needs to have a lot of communication when you're talking to this person in the interview, do they seem communicative? Do they seem at least somewhat personable? You don't necessarily have to test every aspect of their personality right then and there. That can come later, and there is a certain amount of risk with every hire you make. But just in casual conversation, when it comes to talking about the job or the talents required and such, how do they seem? Do they seem to interact? Do they seem to communicate? Do they seem like someone who engages with you, or that you feel you can engage with on these subjects? You're going to have to be working with this person after all. No one has to agree on everything, but you at least have to agree that you know what you're talking about as an employee and you're going to do your job. Okay. Well then, when we come down to diversity, because I think diversity stops, or sorry, I should say the question of diversity starts, my apologies, after you've gotten past the requisite skills and do they seem like they have, at least in a personality attitude sense, the right mojo for being in this team. All right, now let's talk about diversity. Because everybody should be coming from, generally speaking, the same foundationary skill set. After that, you can talk about all the differentials. Now, if we're talking about diversity, and you're asking me, Scribe, about diversity, I would say, and I would mean diversity of thought. Okay, so how do you test for diversity of thought? Well, it's going to be a company by company, team by team sort of situation. But there are a couple of things that come to mind to me if I were going to feel someone out in a hiring process for diversity of thought. First and foremost, something that I don't know a lot of employers actually do, but then again, I haven't really interviewed that many people in my career. You look at the person, you say, so tell me what you know about the company. Just give an open-ended question like that. Because I think it's interesting to find out, someone who wants a job with your company, to find out, well, how interested were they actually in finding out about who they want to work for? Now, do they know what the company does? Do they know anything about its history? Do they know anything about its performance in the market, etc.? Just leave it an open question and just sit there and let them answer. Whatever answer they give may or may not be a deal breaker, but at least tells you something about their personal curiosity about the company. How much time and effort do they actually put into looking into something that conceivably is going to be important to them? That can give you an indication of this person's initiative, and how much they might fit in with solving a problem or answering a question or looking into something that they weren't asked to, but if something's important to them, how would they go the extra effort into finding out that information? Okay. And depending on how they answer, that could lead to other things. Like if they know how well the company performed in this area in the last year or something from some press release or whatever, well, you could ask them. It's like, well, what would you be interested in doing to try to fix that or to go along with that or, whatever. If we're talking about diversity of thought, you have to get them to think in front of you in some way. But here's the one that always comes up to me. Here's the idea for diversity of thought that I always think is a good guideline. If you're actually meaning what you say as a diversity and inclusion officer. Let's say you're hiring someone for a specific team. Again, a team that does a specific thing. And you're in charge of this. And you can recall a decision point for the team or for the company or for your group or whatever within the last, let's say, 6 months. Nothing that's top secret per se, company, private or something, but something that, or you can just change the terms a little bit, but think back to a moment in the company, in an actual incident where there was a decision point. Okay, now the company went one way instead of another. It has to be one of those things. Pose that scenario to the potential hire. Don't give them the answers to which way the company went or the group went, but just pose that in front of them. Give them as much information as you think is necessary and say, what would you have to say? Now, the person you're hiring, the job that they're going for may not have put them in a position of making that decision 6 months ago. Maybe at most it put them in a position of giving some kind of input on the decision. But regardless, ask them, given these circumstances, given this situation, what would you have done? And see how they respond. If they answer immediately with either the A option or the B option without thinking about it too much, as far as you can tell, well, maybe that means they're decisive. Or maybe that means they're just being impulsive. If they ask you more questions to get more information before making a decision, well, that could tell you something about how their mind works and how they're going to approach problems in the future. If they're hesitant and they're not really sure and they get kind of nervous or they're like hedging or trying to feel you out for what the right answer is, well, that can tell you something else about how they operate. And even if they decide on the decision the company did not go with for whatever reason, it's not necessarily a wrong answer, but unless or until they actually then justify why they made that decision, well, you don't know where their mind is going or how their mind works or what their thoughts are. Now, I just, gave about a 3-4 minute description of what I would do if I actually meant that I was hiring people on the basis of diversity of perspective or diversity of thought, etc. But I have never, ever, ever once heard anybody in any of these presentations even come close to describing such a thing. Even those individuals who pass themselves off as diversity hiring consultants or experts, never once have I ever heard them even the barest suggestion that is what they do or that is how they advise companies. Now, maybe that's part of their secret recipe. Maybe they don't give away those details in a YouTube video or in a public panel. I don't know. But not even the barest whiff of such a procedure has ever been presented in any of these videos by any of these corporate experts, by any of these paid consultants. So I don't even know what they're talking about anymore when they talk about diversity of perspectives or backgrounds or thoughts, etc. I just don't believe them when they say those words. And I know it's like, Scribe, what are you, dumb or something? Of course they don't mean it like that. Well, maybe I could assume that. Maybe in my cynical, jaded viewpoint at this stage of the game, I could just assume that they are lying or telling half-truths or whatever else. But I try to approach each one of these things with the notion that whoever is talking is coming at the subject honestly. that they mean what they say. I try to come at these things with an open mind that maybe this is the time or this is the individual that's going to prove me wrong or be the exception to the otherwise observed rule that I've had over the last 3 years or more. But to this point, save for Margie Lee Johnson in that one panel discussion I did a couple of times back. Which one was that? Oh, God. I don't remember the name of it off the top of my head right now. You'll know what it is. The thumbnail is 4 or 5 black and white pictures of the speakers in a blue and gray background. I'll remember the name after I do this stream, of course. You can look it up. It's not that far back that I did that one. Margie Lee Johnson, to this date, is the only person titled with some kind of diversity officer position or something that I've ever heard actually say that they hire people on the basis of diverse things other than optics. You know, now she didn't go into details about how they hire, etc. So I'm not lying when I say I haven't heard somebody actually say something like that yet, but there are people out there who are the exception to the general rule. They are just very rare. But all the same, why haven't I heard anybody even come close to saying something like this? How you would, actually test someone to see, is their perspective diverse from the company's thinking? I mean, you don't necessarily want to hire somebody who's just an absolute contrarian to everything the company does. I mean, that'd be an easy job. It's like, well, we're going to go right today. I say down. Well, but right actually gets us to profitability. Down. I say down. Man, there's a diverse perspective. Give that guy a raise. No, that's not how it works, or that's not how it should work, I guess I should say, if you want to actually increase your bottom line. But anyway, there's not much more for me to say on this because it was just bugging me. After doing this latest video, it's just been bugging me that I've never actually heard anybody put that out or lay that out in any way, shape, or form. Not even like a little test regimen in an interview process. How to hire for diverse perspectives. Just, and some suggestions. Maybe it's out there. Maybe I just have to do a little bit of Google searching or something. But then if I'm listening to expert after expert after expert after officer after corporate official never even approaching such an idea, I got to wonder, even if it's floating out there somewhere, is it actually being implemented? I don't know. Anyway, there's my rant. I don't know if you guys have anything to say, but Fairly Becca says powerful and lonely. Yes, powerful and lonely. That's what it was. Thank you, Becca. That was the video where Margie Lee Johnson appears. Now, I couldn't tell you the names of anybody else on that panel right now, off the top of my head. Even the host, who I've done at least 2 videos on now. But I remember Margie Lee Johnson because she actually said the things that matter. Right? And that's how rare this is, that I can remember that one person's name. But I'd be challenged to name any other corporate executive from any of these videos in the past. But I can remember Margie Lee Johnson. Let's see. I'll say some hellos here. Otherwise, if you guys have any comments or questions or anything, be sure to put them in the chat now, because this is going to be a very short stream. Let's see. Gunnar Anderson, hello. Sir Quack, hello. Chris R, hello. Evil Clipazine, hello. Ebony Williams, hello. Zeogold, hello. Izub, hello. Maniac Man, hello. Brian Wilson, hello. This is Kyle, hello. Bjorn in Gulf City, hello. Becca again, hello. El Vaquero 555, hello. Dragon Watch, hello. Let's see. Chris R said, Scribe, like, these people are collectivists. They think racial and gender diversity is diversity of thought because in their mind, race and gender is a determining factor for thought. That seems to be the suggestion. More often than not, like in this last video where they said, well, the danger is if you hire people who think like you, more likely than not, they're going to look like you. Okay. So yes, as Chris said, then equality of thinking is directly related to the genitals you possess or the color of your skin or whatever. Interesting concept. El Vaquero says, oh, wait, they're talking about Maniac Man. Let's see. Maniac Man says, I always assume there's a motive. It's usually the safest bet. You just let them talk to figure out what that motive is. And Vaquero says, this is true. Would-be tyrants will tell you exactly what they are if you just listen. Yeah, if there's one thing I've learned from watching scads of police interview and interrogation videos and things, because those I find really interesting. Oftentimes, if you just let silence push the conversation, let the person talk, oftentimes people will fill up the empty space of silence with talking rather than let it just sit there uncomfortably. Now, you don't want to make somebody in an interview feel uncomfortable, but you pose them an open-ended question and, just let it flow, as it were. See what happens. See what they say. Let's see. Milkman Dan, hello. Dragon Mage, hello. Wandering Lisa, hello. Let's see. Renovatio says, and yet if anyone who is diverse disagrees with the hive mind, they are destroyed for speaking against the orthodoxy. If not destroyed, then, for lack of a better word, marginalized. Depends. It depends on the company, depends on the group and everything else. And admittedly, if I just believe that the entire world of these corporations and schools and everything operated just on the words of the one person or one or two people that I'm looking at in any particular video, I might have a very, very dour outlook on how things are operating out there. I don't think those represent the 100% of what's going on in those institutions. But the fact that someone is being paid to push that perspective forward is concerning to me, especially in education. Although these days, if you look at how some schools are treating these topics, and then you see how many workplaces are treating them, you'd almost say there is a school to ideologue pipeline going on here. But then, companies are built out of the students and workers they receive. So there you go. Gunnar Anderson, we want diversity, proceeds to think for oneself. No, not like that, bigot. Yeah. And Dragon Watch, the irony of the leftists in politics like AOC pretending to be down to earth is amazing. Well, don't get me wrong. This kind of thinking knows no politics. Okay. Ideological purity tests, whether it's social justice or rampant conservatism or something, this isn't something that is unique to one end of the spectrum or the other. This just happens to be the one that is currently the most well accepted and, to me, some of the most insidious, because you're talking about rolling back and completely contradicting the last, 50 years or more of civil rights legislation, especially when it comes to equal employment opportunity. You have all these companies and all these schools telling the public to their faces, we hire on the basis of things other than merit, on race, on gender, on orientation, etc. We want to populate our workforce not on the basis of what people can do, but on what people are, so that we don't look like we're a insert your phobia company, we're racist, sexist, homophobic, whatever. And I've said it a zillion times before. I say it in almost every one of my diversity videos. I do not understand, to this moment, I do not understand how there is just not a deluge of civil rights lawsuits being filed against all of these institutions. Every tech company, every bank, every school, every whatever, where I've done a video where they have a representative standing on a stage or sitting on a panel and telling everybody to their faces, our priority is to reach X percentage of this demographic. Well, what other mechanism could you possibly use to achieve that goal but to hire using discriminatory practices? I don't know what the answer would be elsewise. And I have been challenged to hear anyone give me an alternative to that. And I don't know. This is the way the world works now. And like I said at the, or well, said but implied with audio at the end of the last video, showing the diversity, or the diversity, I've got diversity on the brain, showing the equal employment opportunity law summary and putting the audio over it, you know, this is kind of an old-fashioned thinking now, or out-of-date thinking or something. I guess it is. So anyway, guys, just a quick little rant, a little, you know, a companion piece to the last video, a little narrative summary of my thinking about the cumulative effect of all these videos that I've been doing for the last couple of years. Not to say I'm never going to do another video on diversity again, but I might try to look for other things to talk about for a while, just because I do a lot of videos on this subject because it never stops bewildering me, I guess. But I guess I need to wean myself off. Anyway, everybody, thank you for coming out to chat with me for a minute. Hope you guys have a good rest of your weekend. And I will see you hopefully all tonight on Monkey's channel on Lords of the Night. Take care.